Welcome to Networking Star. I'm Jeffery Boyle. Here I interview peak performers in their industries, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and athletes who encourage us to have, be, and do more in life. Today, I have Melinda Emerson from Philadelphia. She is a business consultant, author, thriving entrepreneur for more than 24 years, and an internationally known keynote speaker and expert on small business development and social media marketing. She has the third edition of her book coming out now that's called Become Your Own Boss in 12 Months with Simon & Schuster. She also has another book called Fix Your Business. And she loves giving business tips. She calls them boss tips on her handle at Small Biz Lady. So great to have you here. Welcome to Networking Star.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jeffrey.
Well, I'm super excited because it seems to me that you truly know what it is to be a small business person. So after 24 years of doing this, it sounds to me that you love working with other small business people. Tell me a little bit about how you got started.
Well, I actually started as a television producer, but like a lot of people, I got my dream job and I hated it. So I had to figure out what it was I was going to do. So at 26 years old, I left television. I had a laptop, a fax machine, and a dream. And I came home and started my marketing consulting company, Quintessence Group. Initially, we started out doing video production. Eventually, we built websites. In 2007, I read a trade journal that said social media was going to be the next big thing and it was going to revolutionize marketing in the business world as we knew it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to push all my chips in the middle on social media marketing and became a pioneer in it. And that's how I built the business that people know today and my brand as Small Biz Lady that people know me as.
Well, that's a great brand though, Small Biz Lady. And it's so interesting that how we were talking just a little bit before we started about how COVID has really changed everything. So you were kind of a pioneer, 24 years of social media. That is definitely the pioneer in it. But tell me, how do you think that the small business person has had to adapt because of COVID?
Well, I think COVID illuminated who knew how to sell online and who didn't. And if you weren't savvy enough to have an email list of your clients, if you didn't know how to buy ads online, or you just didn't know where your customers hung out online, you were in trouble because you were not dealing face to face with customers. So we saw, people didn't know how to market and sell online. People didn't understand social selling, whether it was a B2B business using LinkedIn or B2C business figuring out how to sell directly on Instagram or Facebook. And then we saw that people didn't know how to use email. And as great as social media is, email's way more reliable and way more trackable. So if you didn't know those three things, you were really in trouble during the pandemic. And I think it was the reason why a lot of businesses got taken out of here.
So you've got 3 books now. Let's talk a little bit about how people get taken out. So in your third edition, how has that book evolved? I mean, you talked about it a little bit. A lot of people were exposed during that time. Tell me a little bit about the difference and how you had to evolve in this third edition with your book.
Well, during the pandemic was when I was updating this book for it to come out. So we looked at what people were struggling with and responded. So I have a chapter on how to develop a sales process. I have a chapter on social selling, how to sell online. I even talk about how to buy ads on Amazon and stuff like that, because people think, oh, I'm going to build this store on Amazon. Okay, well, if you don't know how to buy ads on Amazon, you're still going to be in trouble because you're competing with 2 million other small businesses also selling on Amazon. So there's so much to it. SEO, content, email, lead magnets, your website, your number one sales tool. There's so many things you have to understand and have to know how to reach your customer and what your customer wants. And on top of that, giving them an omni-channel experience. So no matter what device they look at, they can buy from their phone, they can buy from their laptop, they can buy from their iPad, right? So you've got to make sure that all of your stuff is working right. Your pages download quickly. There's so much pressure on online marketing right now because that's where 40% of all sales are taking place is online.
So let's talk a little bit about the omni-channel, you were mentioning that, and I think that a lot of people are completely intimidated now with I mean, you just said the pressure. There's a lot of pressure on small business owners today, especially the person who maybe lost their job pre-pandemic and is still trying to support their family. So it is a lot for a small business person, especially somebody who was an employee before. How
Right.
do you teach a person from going? Because everybody wants, not everybody, a lot of people want to own their own business, right?
Right.
But all of a sudden now they're confronted with this reality. How do
Sure.
you get a person to shift from employee mindset to entrepreneur mindset?
Well, in my book, Become Your Own Boss in 12 Months, I actually have a 6-step system to help people make the transition from employee to entrepreneur. So, the first thing that I tell anyone if they want to start a business is that they need to develop a life plan. They need to figure out what they want and why they want it. Because starting a business is hard. And and I think there's a lot of fantasies of grandeur out here about how to start a business and that you're going to have all this time and no, there's an upfront hazing process involved in starting a business. So I want people to get clear about what they want and why they want it. Then the second thing is they got to look at their financial plan because I tell people all the time, banks do not loan money to start up businesses. The money to start your business is going to come from your right or your left pocket. So people who have savings have options. People who aren't carrying around a bunch of credit card debt have options. And so those are the things that those are the reality things I get people through. And then step 3 is all about validating their business concept and figuring out, okay, what skills do they have and what skills do they need to start their particular business?
Well, and it sounds like you got a couple more steps with it. But one of the things that you said was kind of that hazing process. It's so often I did a post a little while ago. A lot of times as an entrepreneur, the people talk about if you love what you do, then you'll never work another day of your life. I'm like, ha! You've never been an entrepreneur before. There's a lot of things that you don't like, but you have to love the end result,
Right.
not necessarily the process. So talk a little bit about that. And I'd like to hear some of your other steps that you're talking about. But what is that hazing process that you've seen most of your followers go through?
Well, first of all, it takes 12 to 18 months for a business to break even, let alone throw off enough money to replace somebody's corporate salary. Oftentimes, we see people not really be able to take regular paychecks until about year 3 of a business. That's a long time for money to go out and not necessarily be coming back in. So you have to be prepared for that emotionally, as well as having enough savings to be able to still run your household, as well as be able to invest and reinvest back in your business. So that's what I talk about when I talk about the hazing process. Not to mention the fact that I am going to tell you in my 6-step system, you do need a business plan. But your business plan is really your hypothesis of what you think is going to happen. And once you get out here and start pitching customers and dealing with vendors and getting data, that's when you're really going to have to adjust and perhaps even pivot. Maybe the business model that you thought you were going to be in turns out to not really work, and you got to figure something else out. And in that first 24 to 36 months, that's what's going on. You're learning the business of running a business, and you're trying to keep your head above water while you're doing it. And that is why I call it the hazing process up front in a small business.
You can tell. So I talked to lots of different coaches, lots of different people. You do have a certain zest for life. And so it's the kind of thing that you said that really positively, this hazing process. How often do you find that your clients, and as you're talking to these new entrepreneurs and these keynotes that you're doing, that people hear that, but they really don't believe it, right? How often do you think that the people just really go into it and say, I'm going to beat that curve, I'm going to get it done?
Oh, there's way too many overly optimistic entrepreneurs. They get out here and they go and set the world on fire. Okay, that's great. But my friend Jay Samit wrote this book called Disrupt You. And the point of that book is he said, in order to disrupt the world, you have to start by disrupting yourself. And that is as true in business as it is anywhere else. But I really think it comes down to a couple of things that makes a business successful. And actually, this actually goes back to my steps. So step 4 in the Emerson planning system is figuring out who your paying customer is. Too often people get excited about their logo and their website and the invitations to their grand opening event and could not tell you if their life depended on it, who their niche target customer is. But what I know is that every small business has the same 2 problems, and it's limited time and limited resources. So how about you focus on a marketing target you can actually hit? And
Yeah.
so once you got that, and you got a really good, clean business plan, and I don't mean people need a 40-page manifesto, right? I think you need 10 good pages, though, that are going to describe how your business operates. What are you going to do to get the phone ring? How are you going to fulfill the order after the phone rings? And how are you going to keep that customer for life after they do business with you? Those are all the things you kind of need to figure out before you get out here and risk your family's financial future on a half-baked business idea. But let me tell you step 6, though. Step 6 is launch a side hustle first. If you don't have to, I don't believe in quitting jobs to start a business. No, no, no. I believe you need to learn on someone else's dime as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think that's pretty smart. So many times entrepreneurs are completely, you hear of these overnight successes. Well, very rarely does overnight success happen. Typically, overnight success is 20 years in the making. But, you look at all the difficulties of being an entrepreneur. What would you say of the clients that you have had has been the most inspiring, the most impressive success story that person had?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. But I had a woman that actually reached out to me recently, and she told me, she said, Melinda, I grabbed your book in 2015 and read it. And I started my advertising agency, and now I have 30 employees working for me, and we're doing business in 5 or 6 countries. And I was so excited for someone to be like, look, your manifesto worked, like validating my system. But I'm very fortunate because my book has been in print for 13 years because we're in the 3rd edition. I literally get letters from all over the world, sometimes from South America, and I have to hit Google Translate so I can read them. But I love the fact that I wrote this book after my first 10 years in business. And it was the book I had never read. It was the advice I wish someone had given me. And so it inspires me to know that people have used it. And my favorite thing is to meet somebody who said, oh my gosh, I read your book and I actually used it. But a lot of times I get people to say, where were you 13 years ago when I started my business? I needed this book, right? So I hear it from both sides, but there's so many entrepreneurs that I've heard from over the years who are out here killing it because they had a solid foundation from the beginning.
I like how you talked about the pivot. Anybody that's been in business for long enough understands that a business plan is really good till you get punched in the face the first time, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, what I thought is going to work and all this money and all this time that I put into it. How, a lot of times entrepreneurs don't want to launch until they're 100% prepared. And then they launch and all of a sudden their hypothesis isn't as applicable as what they thought. How do you teach that person who doesn't feel 100% prepared to launch how to get started?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody's 100% ready to launch, right? I think 80% is okay. You have to go into it knowing there's going to be a whole lot of lessons you're going to get to learn every day. And fortunately, hopefully, they won't be more expensive than the last lesson you had to learn, right? Because there's a bunch of expensive lessons you get to learn out here in business. I think that if you know your customer, if you know that your product or service is actually something that they need, that they're willing to buy, you understand who your competitors are, you've looked at the landscape, you understand the market, you know the channel, you know the customer, go do it.
Well, and I think that's really wonderful advice. It's kind of thing that I grew up. I put myself through college as an Amway distributor, And it was really funny. There's great things I learned from that, and there's some things that I look back, I'm like, ooh, that's a little bit rough. One of the guys on stage said, "Sell your couch if you have to, sell your car if you have to." And I just thought, as I look back on that now, I'm like, before you burn all of your boats, understand that you got to feed your family just a little bit. So I didn't necessarily love what that coach is talking about. There is a certain sense of having to burn your boats a little bit, but explain kind of that balance of what you were talking about of a side hustle and making sure that you've got somebody else funding your dream.
Well, I think it's important if you're a single person versus you're a married person. If you are a married person, that you got to have a conversation, because whether or not your partner is a partner in your business on paper, they're your partner in life. And if all of a sudden you're chasing this new baby and trying to get this new baby to sleep through the night and get this new baby to walk, you've got to have a conversation with your partner, because they're going to have to do heavy lifting that you used to do in the home. Whether it's now they're the food slayer, now they're doing all the drop off and pick up, and they're doing bed and bath, right? So you really have to have a conversation to make sure your partner is bought in. You also need to look at if you can reduce your lifestyle down to living on one salary so that you can bank the other one to use in the business. Now, if you're a single person, it's all on you, baby. So you've got to figure out how you can save 30 to 40% of every paycheck. And I'm a big fan of starting this a year before you need it, right? So you can cure your addiction to your paycheck. That's how you're going to, by saving more aggressively so that you can have the resources to invest in your business. And you want to keep your personal credit as high as you can, because you are your business's credit when you first start out in business. Even 20 years now, they'll pull my personal credit for a Staples credit card right now today. So you want to make sure that you always pay your bills on time and try to keep your personal credit as high as you can. But it starts with that meeting with your partner. And if your partner is highly risk averse, approach them like they are the bank. Give them a PowerPoint presentation, walk them through it.
It's pretty funny because by the time I got married, I am what you would call a serial and possibly even fanatical entrepreneur. And I have always been super adverse to debt. And my wife, when she came in, her family is mostly an employee type of family.
Mhm.
And oh my goodness, it was quite the let's just say struggle to get on the same page. And I remember it was such a struggle. One time I made a $10,000 investment into something without telling her. Let's just say that went poorly. So explain a little bit, because we've got a couple of minutes left. We talked about just how COVID changed the landscape of employment, and a lot of people's jobs were completely disrupted. Perhaps they weren't ready to, as you said, to have that year in advance of going on. Maybe they lost their job because of COVID or some other type of layoff. How about a person that's been married for a bit, that has been an employee, and all of a sudden finds that they can't get a job again, and they're thinking about being an entrepreneur? What do you say to that person?
Well, I think that, if you have the luxury of 12 months, great. If you don't, that's a lot of people's reality. Hopefully you got a little severance or something, because you got to take up, health insurance and things like that, and figure out how you're going to cover those things. But in that case, if you're in an urgent situation for entrepreneurship, I think you got to look at what you know that you can sell. Being a consultant, becoming a coach, building a course. Like, those are sort of like the low-hanging fruit type things you can do if you suddenly find yourself, okay, I've been out here 6 months looking for a job. It's not happening. I got to make a job. Those are the things that I think the easiest thing you can do is sell information. And what you know is the easiest, quickest thing to turn into a business.
I agree with that 100%. With the Amazons of the world, and now even Walmart making a push, this race to the bottom on prices of products is becoming more and more difficult to make money. And one of the most valuable commodities and one of the most valuable just sources of things that we have is our knowledge, and how we can impart that on someone. The final thing I'll ask you, which is, I just in getting to know you, I'm pretty sure I know how you're going to answer this, but what is the importance of how you said be a coach or sell or create a course? What is the importance of having a mentor coach when you're first starting off as an entrepreneur?
Oh my gosh, it is invaluable to have what I call a kitchen cabinet of advisors around you. You need somebody who's an existing entrepreneur who's going to tell you where the potholes are so you can sidestep them. You need someone who is a customer or a potential customer who can be that internal advocate for you, give you the real budget, right? Also, you need somebody who's a mentor that has nothing to do with your business. This person is going to be your emotional support. They're going to talk you down from the ledge on those days when you need that. And then the last two people in your kitchen cabinet is somebody who's a lawyer and somebody who's an accountant. Now, if you had the opportunity to go to college, chances are you know somebody who's a lawyer or an accountant. And what I love about this group of people is that you can call them and ask them for advice and not expect a bill. And I call them a kitchen cabinet of advisors because you can take them to lunch, feed them with food, right? That is how you're going to pay your bill. So you need that confidential sounding board of folks around you because starting a business is hard. You're going to hear no far more than you're going to hear yes. And you're going to need some people to pick you up and say, hey, it's okay. You'll live to fight another day. You'll be okay. Let's look at the lesson you should have learned from that and keep it moving.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Tell us one more time where we can find you, because you obviously have a wealth of information to be able to provide people. I can see why your books have been successful. I can see why people want you to speak. You've got a wonderful, wonderful dynamic to you. And I know that the short amount of time we've had together is going to be a big benefit to the people who listen to us. So where do they find you and get some more of these tips?
Well, my website is smallbizladyuniversity.com. But if you just want to follow me on all the socials, I am Small Biz Lady, or certainly you can connect with me on LinkedIn as Melinda Emerson, my government name.
Your government name with it. Love it, Melinda. Thank you so much for being with us on Networking Star. And I look forward to getting more of your tips on all these different sources that you've provided for us and the wonderful books that you've been able to put out. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeffrey.
Talk to you soon.